So this year I'm taking part in an art fight. Basically it's where you've got two teams and you attack or defend by redrawing each other's artwork. Now I'm on Team Fossil and this Team Crystal. At the time of this we're neck and neck, which is really cool. And as you can see they've divided by two colours. There is a website, artfight.net, where you can see recent attacks and join. You submit your characters. I've done a couple of my narrators and one of my original ICs, and people can redraw them in their attacks, or people on your team can draw them and they go into your defences as well. You can follow people, as you can see. We've got a couple of the channel followers and some other people. Most of the artist crew are on Team Fossil, like Nerd, and drawing with Mr. S, Night by King. But we have Kingpin Creations, and Kingpin Creations, I'm sorry, but all coming to get you. Sorry, not sorry, enjoy the mayhem and the chaos. And that's about it for Art Fight. So, let's get into it. First up, we have my revenge on Great Elder. They drew Nexum, and they drew Nexum in their style, and it was quite cool. So, in the true spirit of Art Fight, I decided, let's get some revenge. I saw the character Crystal Falls, and I thought it was quite a unique design, as you can see on the left of the screen. She got the ability to grow crystals out of her skin, and I thought this is quite an awesome ability for a character. Not to mention, I do like the contrast between the blue and the pink colours. As you can see, I kind of mapped out the pose. I wanted to go for a perspective pose, and then I started adding the details on top, which was quite fun. I've used the kind of like a layer color tool on Clip Studio. It allows me to change all the drawing on the layer to a different color to point out the bits I'm working on. I did have trouble with the mouth, but yeah. We got there in the end, which is quite cool. And then we're on to the inking. And this, I always say, is the chance to refine your line art. And I learned this from another YouTuber, Lost Art. Even though you've got the rough sketch underneath, when you're inking, you don't have to keep to the rough sketch all the time, which means that you can kind of just add extra details that you didn't have. You can adjust bits that don't look quite right, and this is probably the part of the artwork that takes the most time overall in the grand scheme of things. Once you've got the line art right and you make sure you close all the lines, you can use it as a reference layer, which is a technique I use. This allows me to just basically colour fill anything inside of each of the lines, which is really cool. Not much else to say on this bit because it's just doing the line up, but the crystals were fun to do. Took a little bit of time, and I could probably have changed the shape a bit more, made them a bit more unique, but I do like the way that they came out. I also decided at this point that even though they're in groups on Great Elder's original design, I'd probably section them out to be alternating crystals just to make it look a little bit cool. I changed a bit of the line art to match colours for the crystals just to give them an extra vibe. Added the skin, the base flat colours, which is quite cool. And once I decided what I was going to do with this, it was basically on to rendering it out. I have to say, I do love the blue highlights in the hair. It really, really makes it pop and stand out quite nicely. So we're on to the shading stage, and basically I just have a couple multiply layers, probably a color glow or color dodge or glow dodge layer, just to add a little bit of oomph later on some of the types of materials, an overlay layer, and sometimes an add glow to add an extra highlight, but we'll see how that goes. Usually I just colour fill a section for a shadow, and then I use the soft eraser dropped in the opacity to just take sections out, which you'll see, and it just gives that nice kind of like blended effect in terms of from the dark contrast to the light contrast on areas. It's a great tool to do certain effects for materials, because not all materials have the same way of handling light when it hits them. I don't think there's much else to say on this one, except for a bit later on, while doing the background, I did do kind of like one of my usual go-tos that you'll see in this clip, which was the kind of like this spell or the runic type circle behind, and tried it at a different angle, but it didn't work. So I basically took a break, I forgot to record again, and I changed the background to be a bit more abstract. Top tip while we're here doing the eyes, add an add glow with a little highlight in like a desaturated orange, and it just makes them pop out on the layer above all of your colours at the end. I'll just leave you to enjoy the rest of this artwork, and I'll catch up with you on the next one. So next up, we've got my revenge on PlagueSymby with their character Perish. Now they drew Demonica Darkstorm with a lovely flame background, and they caught the entire essence of it, and it was amazing. So I decided to check out the channel on Artfight, and lo and behold, all their characters were venomized. They were symbiotes. I saw this and I was like, yes! I could really have some fun with this, because those of you who are long-term followers of the channel know my first set of videos with stories were venomizing stuff. It was like the Transformers, Marvel characters, DC characters, and I've got a whole series, the Multiverse Story Arc, which kind of got to a certain point and then we didn't continue it, and I'll probably have to go back to it. That's a whole different spiel. But I saw this, and this is their character Perish, the Queen of the Symbiotes. And what I really like about this character is that they included an armor gifted to this symbiote by Null, the kind of like goddess symbiote. And the key requirement for this was to keep the details of the armor if you redraw this character. And I did my best on this. I've done a little bit of interpretation on the armor slightly just to match my style, but all the core elements are there. It's only a minimal change in one or two things, but that's just fleshing out the details. The crown, however, I will say this, and you will see probably from what's done in the quick sketching phase, I love the design of the crown, but doing that in perspective, that is the hardest thing I've had to do. I have to say that's as difficult as doing hands. I mean, seriously, that's absolutely insane. I wanted to keep the face simple on this one because, you know, a nice smile, but I had to have the tongue sticking out. That's my one go-to with venomizing and symbiotes at the moment. It's the tongue. It's sticking out the slimy saliva, and I decided, as you'll see later on, to add that glow effect I kind of developed when I was working on them. I wanted to try and get this one also to match my venomized Kefla from the live streams that I did in terms of quality. So I did add the kind of effect over the body. The key difference between this image and my usual symbiotes or venomized stuff that I do, this is a fully covered in a symbiote character. There's no half transformation, there's no pulling of the symbiote off, which I was tempted to try and maybe tweak and add, but I really liked the design of this character all in all. And I thought, why not? Let's go for it. I was a bit concerned with the hair and the colour of the symbiote, I will say skin, wrapping around the character being similar, especially when I was doing some of the shadows bits, the kind of like the orange and the pale yellow. But once I got more into this and started adding the sort of like the highlights on the skin and then the glow effects later, and then adding the details into the hair, I think the contrast was quite nice. I have to say it was a very, very cool design, PlagueSymby, and I absolutely loved drawing this. If you ever catch this video, I also wanted to have a bit of fun with the armor, so I had to try and make it metallic and add the light details onto it. It was one of those ones where I kind of knew what I wanted for the lighting, but I wasn't quite sure how it reflects on certain bits. I know I wanted the light source coming from the top, well, right of the image, coming down onto the face and the hand that's up. I mean, let's face it, this is the Queen of Symbiotes. The pose I chose is kind of like a commanding but loyal, kind of like a noble-ish pose, and I'm hoping that pulls off in this artwork, and it adds to the feel and vibe of the character. I have to say, I really did enjoy this. It took a little bit trying to figure out how to get the hair to contrast out, a bit of blue behind it. I wanted to just have something to make the neck stand out from the hair, which works rather well. I loved working on the eyes, it was so much fun to do them. And the tongue, I followed my basic usual way of doing the tongue with the layers and adding a bit of a yellowy orangey glow bit, and then the saliva, I wanted to put a bit of blue and pink in there just to contrast off. The crown, I wanted to go a bit simple, even though I knew it would be probably jewels or symbiote type of thing reflecting. I wanted to just make sure it kind of had that effect. And then it was onto the tonal curves, which, if anybody knows, to make the artwork pop, filters. So, the moment you've all been waiting for. I decided to attack Kingpin Creations. This isn't a revenge, didn't even know I was going to do this character. I did say I've got some revenges to do and I'm probably going to attack him, but that was it. And when I saw Kingpin's character, Young Dog, I just knew the pose I wanted to do. I mean, this guy is kind of like a music scene character after his world suddenly became filled with colour and sound. Which is quite cool. Even though the style is more like the old-fashioned kind of videos for the music videos, the silent films where the mouth moves and then the words appear on screen, I quite like the whole concept of this kind of like music style, I'm assuming a werewolf type character, and the overall design. So I wanted to incorporate that, which means that I decided to do this pose where it's kind of like the iconic one we kind of assume with this type of music and that, and kind of like cool elements, which is the pose where they're kind of like an upshot in perspective with like a hand out to the front doing some kind of symbol gesture. I didn't want to do the sort of like the one that he had with the thumb and the little finger. I decided to just open the hand a bit more to show the nails and stuff to make it kind of stand out, and I really enjoyed this one. I did map out the background originally to have the same symbol behind it, as you saw in the rough sketch, just because I thought, you know, that's the medallion, that's Young Dog's symbol, it'd be quite cool to have that in the background and maybe stylize it. But I changed the background later on and I think it came out much cooler. I kind of went with the whole colour aspect from the description, and as far as I'm concerned, it just completed the vibe on this one. So here we are again, just filling in the flats. It's a time-consuming process, but a worthwhile process. You want to get the key elements of the character. Now, with Artfight, you are free to change the clothing or do certain things with the character within reason. There are permissions that they'll put on there to say, you know, they don't want you to do this with their character, please respect this. So for example, with Perish previously, it was to keep the details on the armour as close to it as possible. Basically, the armour has to be how it is to draw the character. With this one, I just decided to roll with it and have fun. I kind of like knew where the light source was going to come from, I kind of like knew where the shadows from the cap were going to go, and as I say, I knew what pose I wanted to do, so it was just roll with it. And adding the details onto this was so much fun. Even though it was less details and really simple, it kind of worked. And I don't know how I did it, but on the sleeve, there's a bit of the cloth, which we just saw, I say cloth, the bit of the fabric, that has a gradient and a solid side, and it worked. And I need to learn how to do that more for folds, where it's darker where the light hits and it gradients out more, because I think that will take my clothes rendering to the next level. So I learned something new. I tend to learn something new on every artwork I do, which is great, because once I do something that's new, I like to incorporate it going forwards. So yeah, doing the shades and that. I decided I'd do the shades and not worry about eyebrows because all the cap comes down, have the glasses covering them all, and I wouldn't have to worry about eyes on this one, but the same technique works. Then it's on to adding the effects like the tonal layer, the hard light, make it a bit blurred, dreamy, just doing the colours and the background. So I kind of wanted a background colour contrast which works, then I put the ground in. I decided to do a texturized pattern on it and I thought, yeah, that looks cool. And then I decided to type young, like in young dog, and I got that in, and then I was just like playing around with effects. I kind of thought, oh, what if I made it like a colourful colour? And it's like, well, actually the black on the colour stands out more. And then colour on the background with a darker gradient instead. And then in the end, I did go through several layer variations to get it to work